Hi, this is my review of the Pathfinder role-playing game Planar Adventures. This is your ultimate guide to any sort of adventure or campaign that you want to have in the great beyond. In fact, I'm surprised that this was not called the ultimate planar guide or something, because you obtain many things with this book. You have archetypes, new spells, feats, magical items, extensive information on the different planes. It's all here and more. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality is great. You have bookmarks, everything is well organized, written and explained. The table of contents does not contain hyperlinks, but I prefer bookmarks to hyperlinks. The graphic design and layout is great, as expected of any Pathfinder book, and the illustrations are quite awesome. They look so colorful and exotic, trying to communicate the otherworldliness of the planes that are the subject matter of this book. My only criticism is that at certain parts of the pages you have this little white line, like about a millimeter long, and it's slightly distracting. It looks like some sort of print mark or reticule mark or something, or template mark, who knows. But it's somewhat distracting. Maybe it won't be that much of a big deal for most, but I still want to mention that. But overall the quality is great. I think this book contains some of the most beautiful illustrations in the Pathfinder books that I have ever seen. Now, let's talk about the contents. So if you ever wanted to have an adventure or an entire campaign beyond the material plane, this is the book for you. But you know how player characters are. They're always tinkering and playing around with any sort of portal or spell or magical device or artifact that could transport them to other places. So this book contains a lot of material to better structure those events, those accidents or incidents within a particular adventure or campaign. So the book starts with an introduction telling you what a plane is, how to visualize the great beyond, because there is a division or hierarchy or categorization rather of the different places that you can visit beyond the material plane. You have the inner planes that are composed of the 6 basic essences, that is, the 4 elements of nature, but also 2 polarities, the positive and negative poles. You also have the outer planes that are composed of a 7th essence known as the quintessence. It's an essence that is shaped and influenced by the morals and ethics of life and death. You also have the transitive planes that include the astral plane and the ethereal plane. At times they feel a bit like a highway, like an extra-dimensional highway in the multiverse. You also have demi-planes that are kind of like pocket dimensions or extra-dimensional spaces. And you have the beyond the beyond. This hints at the possibility of going even farther from the known planes of existence. This book makes references to other Pathfinder books. However, remember that everything is available for free at the Pathfinder system reference document, and I'm going to put a link in the description below to that. So if you do not have the Bestiaries or some other books that are referenced throughout the entire Planar Adventures book, it's quite easy for you to check that out for free. You have more information on how the planes interact, how they overlap or connect. And the book gives you information on the types of races that will be commonly featured in these Planar Adventures. Some of them are quite standard, that is, you have the Aasimar, you have Fetchlings, Ifrits, Sylphs, but you do have some specific races that appear in this book. Let's talk about some of them first. First, we have the Aphorites. These are the primary inhabitants of the perfect city of Axis. They are outsiders, born of lawful neutral souls. Their primary focus is to serve Axis in one of 3 ways: the construction and tending of inevitables, the expansion and maintenance of the city itself, and exploring and calculating the laws and constants that underpin all reality in hopes of using this knowledge to bring order to the great beyond. So, when it comes to the racial traits, they are quite strong and intelligent, but not too dexterous. They actually have dark vision. They have a bonus in crafting checks. They have spell-like abilities such as protection from chaos. They have certain resistances related to poison and mind-affecting effects. And they also have crystalline dust, which basically manifests as a haze that forms into indistinct runes and glyphs surrounding the body. So this effect actually grants you a percentage miss chance against melee and ranged attacks. Then we have the Dusk Walkers. These are tall, bipedal, grey-skinned beings with a connection to Pharasma's boneyard. They manifest directly on the material plane, incarnating from souls that have earned the honor of a second life. When it comes to their traits or characteristics, they are quite dexterous and wise, but their constitution is somewhat frail. They are quite knowledgeable in religion and heal checks, and they have an advantage when striking spectral beings, and they have a racial bonus on saving throws against negative energy and death effects. Then we have the Gansi. Gansis are the result of planar chaos touching living creatures. Where the planes brush against the material plane, or where chaotic inhabitants affect or influence mortal life, Gansis are born in their wake, like ripples in a pond. These are actually quite interesting. They have characteristics of being quite sturdy or hardy, that is, they have high constitution and charisma, but low intelligence. They have a resistance to different types of energy such as acid, electricity. They have a racial bonus on sense, motive, and survival checks, but the most interesting thing about them is the Gansi oddity feature. Basically, the Gansi are infused with the entropic forces of the Maelstrom, so they have some sort of oddity that gives them an advantage on certain things. This can be determined randomly. For example, maybe your character has entropic flesh, so this gives you a bonus in escape artist checks and against grapple combat maneuvers and such. You could also have a prehensile tail, or maybe you have some sort of spell-like ability, duplicating the effect of some sort of spell such as alter self, blur, detect thoughts, etc. And so you can create a character belonging to any of these races. So this is going to be quite exciting when navigating the planes, having somewhat of an advantage and not feeling completely out of place in Planar Adventures because of the weirdness of these character races. Now let's talk about the archetypes. First we have the Azadariel. This feels slightly on the comedic side of things because this is basically a champion of Elysium. This is a swashbuckler archetype that specializes in jumping in and out of combat, causing some misdirection. That is, for example, if you're getting flanked and the opponent misses his attack, you can actually switch places with your opponent. You can also deal some pretty devastating piercing attacks. And the best thing of all is, as a champion of Elysium, you can actually heal your party members with the power of love. You can remove negative effects from them with a wink or a kiss or whatever, so it's going to be really good archetype for some funny moments at the table. And then you have the Chronicler of Worlds. This is an interesting bard archetype. Instead of being powered by your charisma, all of your abilities are rather based on intelligence. So you have great planar lore. You can actually attune the other members of the party to a specific plane through the quintessence infusion, so that they get benefits from specific planes. And this bard rejects cosmic morality, so you get a bonus when trained to resist spells or effects that are based on the target's alignment. Then we have the Dream Thief. This rogue archetype sacrifices a bit of combat potential for the ability to control dreams and to even go into the dreams of non-player characters and finding out secrets, clues, plans. So this archetype feels a bit like a Dreamweaver spy of sorts. Then we have the Alchemist archetype of the Energist. This is basically an alchemist that can focus on negative or positive energy. So your ampoules, your bombs are going to be infused with either positive or negative energy to either harm or heal undead or mortals alike. That is, using the opposite polarity. Positive energy is going to heal mortals and damage undead, and negative energy is going to heal undead and damage mortals. So this is going to be great if you have unusual allies. Maybe you have undead comrades in the group, because nowadays there are so many undead races that you can use in your Pathfinder games. You have vampires, ghouls, revenants. So if you wanted to heal your undead allies, you could have an energist focusing on the negative energy. Then we have Gloomblade. This is a very cool fighter archetype. This is somewhat of an acrobatic fighter that is able to create shadow weapons. Now the special thing about shadow weapons is that if you decide to create, for example, 2 shadow weapons, they will get some enhancements and some abilities as you go up in power, such as defending, flaming, frost, etc. But if you decide to create a single powerful shadow weapon, this single weapon is going to be even more powerful in both raw combat bonus, but also in the abilities that you can give it. Maybe you can create a weapon that produces a brilliant energy or speed effect. So this is great if you're fighting a big powerful enemy like a boss type of adversary. You could use just a single weapon. But if you are fighting several weaker enemies, it could be a great idea to create 2 weapons instead to carry out more attacks per round, even though they are somewhat weaker when compared to the stronger version of the shadow weapon. Then we have the Idealist. This is a cleric archetype that can basically create a mini plane around him. So you get several bonuses related to that plane, and you can also spontaneously cast spells of that specific plane that should be tied to your deity. Then we have the Pact Witch. This is a witch archetype that instead of creating a bond with a patron, you create a bond with an outer plane. So you could create a bond with the Abyss, with Axis, with Heaven or Nirvana. And your familiar is going to be an outsider of that particular plane. So for example, someone who creates a bond with the Boneyard, you're going to have a Nosoi familiar. If you create a bond or pact with the Maelstrom, it's going to be a Void Worm, etc. And you're going to get spells related to that planar pact, such as protection from chaos, evil, good, law, it depends on the plane, or effects such as lesser planar ally, banishment, gate, and so forth. Then we have the Planar Scout. This is a ranger archetype. Just like rangers on the material plane specialize on different environments, the Planar Scout is a master of traversing or navigating the different planes to the point that he can actually channel the energy from these planes and share this bond with members of his party. And depending on the plane with which you form a bond, you could, for example, if you are connected to the plane of shadow, you gain dark vision and you get a bonus on stealth checks. And if you are connected to the plane of water, you gain the amphibious subtype and you become an excellent swimmer. Then we have the Portal Seeker, an investigator archetype. This feels slightly Lovecraftian because you can close, open, and identify gates. And of course, this lends itself to send some things through the portals or calling some things into this world. I think that the Planar Adventures book is going to work really well at the side of Sandy Peterson's Cthulhu Mythos for the Pathfinder RPG. If you haven't seen my review of that one, I'm going to put a link in the description below. Then we have the Progenitor, a druid archetype. This is a druid focused on regeneration, but also of becoming infused with the power of the Fae. So for example, when you cast Summon Nature's Ally, this summoned creature gains fast healing. And instead of transforming into, say, an elemental, your druid will be able to transform into different forms of Fae, such as Fae Form 1, Fae Form 2, altering your size. So you could say that this druid archetype also has the theme of growth. Then we have the Soul Warden. This is a spiritualist archetype focusing on having a bond with a Nosoi. And this Nosoi is quite powerful. At the highest level, you can summon countless other Nosoi, and you also have great control over anger, dedication, despair, fear, hatred, jealousy through the elegies of your Nosoi. Then we have the World Seeker Wizard archetype. If you wanted a Magic the Gathering Planeswalker type of player character, this is a good archetype for that. So you have things such as Walk the Planes, a Planar Adaptation, Planar Associates, Planar Readout, everything related to interacting with the planes and the inhabitants of the planes, and even creating your own personal demi-plane. This is the archetype for you. Now let's talk about some of the feats in this book. You have new feats, and they are all categorized by combat feats, conduit feats, which grant the ability to draw energies from other planes, and you also have metamagic feats as well, style feats, just like those presented in Pathfinder RPG Ultimate Combat. Let's talk about some of the feats. We have Channel Deific Essence. You expend the use of channel energy to gain a boon associated with your deity. We have Grasping Tail. You use your tail to grab small stout objects as a swift action, and this can be developed further to the point that you can actually get an extra tail attack. Then we have Gravitational Vital Strike. You deal additional damage in heavy or light gravity. You have Planar Heritage. You gain access to options available to a type of native outsider. You have Subjective Mobility. You move via falling more easily on planes with subjective directional gravity. And we will talk about these gravity related situations later on in this review. We have some feats such as the Death Field. You exude negative energy that hinders entangling plants and swarms. We have Last Rites. Damage hunts or undead that are vulnerable to resurrection with a touch attack. There is Phase Strike. Make a weapon attack as a touch attack. We have Planar Infusion. This is a very interesting feat because it has to do with different archetype abilities, item effects, and it basically allows you to benefit from some of the properties of different planes. We have Apocalyptic Spell. Area affected by spell becomes difficult to move in. We have Crypt Spell. Damaging spell hinders resurrection or sickens undead. We have the Archon Style of Combat, granting your allies armor class bonus against a single opponent's attacks. We have the Azata Style, giving you a dodge bonus as long as you move at least 15 feet. We have Diabolic Style, humiliate targets that provoke attacks of opportunity. So all of these feats, as you can see, are in theme with the Planar Adventures, whether you are an outsider using them, or you are fighting outsiders, or trying to interact directly with the planes. Then we have new spells. Some of the spellcasting classes only have a few spells in a few levels of spells. That is, you have between 1 to 3 levels of new effects, but most of the classes have between 5 to 9 levels of new spells, several spells in each level. So there's a substantial amount of them overall. So we have new spells such as, for example, on the Anti-Paladin Spells category, we have Speak with Soul. You hold an extended conversation with a soul. On the Bard Spells, we have Diminish Resistance. You weaken a creature's energy resistance. The Blood Rager gets Infuse Self. You assume the form of a native outsider. Clerics get things such as Homeward Bound, returning a creature to its home plane, or Judgment Undone. You restore a petitioner to its mortal life. You have new Inquisitor spells such as Positive Pulse. Energy harms undead or bolsters the living. Or the Spell Balance. You are protected from neutral creatures. You have Mesmerist spells such as Conjure Music from a good aligned plane. So pretty much every spellcasting class is covered here. I'm just giving you a few examples because you have lists for occultists, for rangers, for sorcerers and wizards, spiritualists, summoners, etc. Let's talk about some magical items. And one cool thing is that they are organized in categories similar to those outlined in the Pathfinder RPG Ultimate Equipment. So you can use them with the treasure generator in that book. So you have new armor special abilities such as Billowing, which constantly creates a cushion of elemental air around the wearer. You have Shadow Blending, which mutes colors in your armor to dull grays, and so there is a percentage chance that your opponents will miss when trying to attack you. There are some pretty cool suits of armor such as the Breastplate of the Plains, that gives you an enhancement bonus depending on the plane in which you're at. There is a Gug hide, you know, like that Lovecraftian monster. So this is basically like the hide of a Gug that you put on, and each arm splits into two. So this is going to be very useful for rangers and perhaps some barbarians that specialize in dual wielding. You have new weapon special abilities such as Plane Striking that allows you to ignore damage reduction against outsiders. You also have some specific weapons like, for example, the Erratic Blade. This is a transformative scimitar that gives the spellcaster a bonus when trying to cast spells in planes where there are some strange magical effects that could hinder your spellcasting. You have new rings, such as the Ring of Planar Focus, which allows you to see a map of the particular plane that you want, depending on the tuning fork that you are using. You have some new rods that make it easier to travel between planes or even affect other planes from separate planes entirely, for example, affecting the material plane from the ethereal plane. You have some wondrous items like, for example, the astrolabe, which allows you to create an abstraction of north, east, south, up, down, etc. because there are some planes where the normal directions do not apply. So this helps you not to get lost. For example, if you are moving through a plane that seems endless or limitless, this is going to be quite useful. There are the boots of planar grounding that they make you count as a native to a plane that you are visiting. That is, you never get the extra planar subtype. You have other things like, for example, the planar strap. When tied around the grip of your weapon, that weapon becomes immune to the harmful environmental effects of a plane, such as heat or acidity. Now let's talk about the chapter where they tell you how to run Planar Adventures. This chapter is essential on understanding how to run the planes because they give you the characteristics of the planes, such as, for example, gravity traits. Maybe the plane has normal gravity or heavy gravity or light gravity. But there are also some strange things like, for example, maybe the plane has no gravity at all. Or maybe there's objective directional gravity, that is, the gravity is focused around an object or a section, a wall or a ceiling. Or maybe there is subjective directional gravity, that is, gravity is determined by your will, by your force of will. Maybe you want to suddenly feel attracted to that section of floor over there, you can do that, or to that piece of wall, then you're suddenly pulled to that place. There are also some time-related considerations, because in some planes time could flow normally, but in other places time could be erratic, it could change, slowing down or speeding up, and some planes could be timeless. There are also some more specific realm traits, like, for example, maybe the plane is immeasurable, it's just infinite, or maybe it's clearly defined, or maybe it's unbounded. Perhaps the borders wrap in on themselves and you're moving in one direction and you end up in the opposite direction. There are also structural traits to the planes. Maybe they have a morphic structure or lasting structure. That is, maybe there is some stability, or maybe when you affect something it changes back to the way it was. Maybe you break something and it's suddenly as if you never touched it. Maybe it's constantly changing with no reason at all, or maybe there is some sort of intelligence or sentience causing the changes. Maybe everything is static, so you cannot affect objects in that place in a significant way. When it comes to the essence of the planes, maybe there is a predominant natural energy related to air or earth, fire or water. Maybe it's a mixed essence, or maybe it's a realm of complete darkness, of the negative pole, or maybe a plane is dominated by light and positive energy. There are also some alignment traits that could make it somewhat difficult to act in that plane if you are not of that particular alignment. There are also magic traits. Some of them can cause spells to be quite erratic and random, because, for example, if it's a plane of wild magic, you will need to make a roll in the wild magic effects table to see if the spell is not affected, or maybe the spell rebounds on its caster, or maybe the spell affects a random target or area, or maybe the spell simply won't function. Maybe the plane is a plane of dead magic, magic simply does not work, or there is enhanced magic, making spells more powerful, or maybe there is some sort of impediment or limited magic that only allows the casting of specific spells. It could be anything. Then we have information on the River of Souls. This is where all the souls go to when they pass the border between life and death. So you have information on specific terminology such as death, mortal, petitioner, quintessence, soul, River of Souls, everything related to this flow of energy that makes itself apparent when a soul vacates its body and joins the River of Souls. So you have some explanations as to what happens when a mortal dies, how you are drawn to this river and judged by Pharasma, and you are sent to a particular plane based on the essence of your soul, usually related to your faith and conviction. You even have an explanation as to where souls come from. It's still a point of debate, because some say that they come from the positive energy plane, but some others think that it's a more complex thing. So in this book there is actually a lot of great material for anything related to character death, and the journey that begins when that actually happens. You could even get stuck in the boneyard if you're not careful. Then we have a section detailing the role of the divine. Everything related to definitions of what a deity is, a demigod, a quasi-deity, divine intervention, the divine gifts, and the deific realms. You also have information on the core pantheon of the Pathfinder setting. You have information on the different gods and goddesses, such as Abadar, Master of the First Bolt, Caden Kalian, the Drunken Hero, Desna, Song of the Spheres, Gosre, the Wind and the Waves, Yomedai, the Inheritor, Pharasma, Lady of Graves. All of the gods are fully stated concerning their divinity, that is, their realm, their allies, their relations with others, enemies, their symbols, temples, their sacred animals and colors, their holy days, their domains, subdomains, favored weapon, worshippers, minions, herald, and the divine gift. The divine gift is usually a bonus or an ability that they give to their, or rather bestow upon their followers. Then you have information on why the player characters would go into a planar campaign. Maybe they need access to a certain thing. Maybe there's some sort of place, a library, or some sort of vault that can only be found in one of the places of the great beyond. Or maybe they are trying to acquire something, an item, an artifact. Maybe they want to fight a specific enemy that is residing on one of the planes. Maybe they want to rescue someone. There are many reasons as to why the player characters would try to risk going into these different unknown places. You also have information on how to present the planes, that is, not handling the planes as if they were just simple dungeons, and how to move in places where the normal is abnormal and vice versa. The different methods of traveling the planes are detailed, maybe using amulets or gates, or some sort of spell. You even have a lot of information that is going to be very useful to adapt the setting specific material to other cosmologies. And then we reach what is possibly my favorite section of the book, the Great Beyond. Here you have a lot of information, not only specific, I'm talking about substantial information on each of the planes that player characters can't visit. So for example, you're going to get the name and description of each plane, the category, the traits, the denizens, the infusions, that is the powers that you could draw from the different planes through the use of abilities, feats, spells, etc. It's all here. You even have some information concerning encounter tables. So first we have the ethereal plane, the ghost world, the in-between, the space between spaces. You can visit some areas here, such as the House of the Itinerant Soul. You have details on how to explore this place. Then we have information on the first world, the realm of the Fae, with places such as the House of Eternity, with locations such as the Crumbling Tower and the Forest Pools. Then we have information on the Shadow Plane. This is also known as the Netherworld, the Plane of Death. You can visit places such as the Shadow Absalom and the Abbey of Nevers. Then there's the Negative Energy Plane, the Nothing, the Void, with places such as Malikar's Keep and Eternity's Doorstep. Then we have information on the Positive Energy Plane, Creation's Forge, the Furnace. You could visit the Prismatic Vault. You could go to the Dominion of the Khazatras. There's also the Plane of Air, also known as the Endless Sky, the Firmament. You could explore the Sea Knight's Embrace and the ruins of Neverendday. Then we have the Plane of Earth, the Eternal Delve, the Foundation. Here you could visit Lava Loch, or the Gold Hive. Then we have the Plane of Fire, also known as the Everlasting Flame, the Inferno, the Eternal Furnace. You could explore locations such as the Auroric Palace or the Cradle of Flames. And of course we have the Plane of Water, also known as the Deep, the Boundless Sea. You could explore the Evershale or the Lion's Mouth Hold. Then we have the Astral Plane. As I was saying, the ethereal and the astral plane, they feel a bit like a multiverse highway of sorts. This is also known as the Silver Sea. You could visit locations such as the Soul Mouth or the Argent Gate. Then we have Heaven, the Holy Mountain, Paradise, Realm of the Righteous. You could explore the Alabaster Passage or Forge Heart. Then we have Nirvana, the Great Wilderness, Sanctuary of Enlightenment. We have places within it such as Blossom Heart or the Everlight. Then we have Elysium, the Promised Land, Realm of Heroes. You could visit the Emerald Song or the Boundless Azure Ocean. Then we have Axis, the Eternal City, the Perfect City, Utopia. You could go to the Adamantine Crucible or Dusk Fathom. Then we have the Boneyard, the House of Dust, Purgatory, the Spirelands. You could visit locations such as the Eight Courts or even Pharasma's Palace. Then we have the Maelstrom, also known as the Borderlands, the Cerulean Void, Limbo. Here you could explore places such as the Palace of Love Eternal or Vasragal. Then we have Hell, also known as the Pit, with locations such as Atalu or Dis. Then we have Abaddon, also known as the Eternal Eclipse, Hades, Gehenna, with locations such as the Blood Rot or the Drowning Court. Then we have details on the Abyss, also known as the Outer Rifts, Pandemonium, with locations such as the Rift of Repose or Alushiniria. And this is just a small glimpse into all of it. You have information on the denizens, but also of the different places where the denizens inhabit. We're talking about several pages of entries concerning specific denizens, divinities, all of the different gods and demons and archdevils and everything can be found in this section of the book. All of the locations are highly detailed. All of the particulars concerning the exploration of the different planes is quite complete and ready to be used in either a single adventure or an entire campaign just featuring a single plane if you wanted to. You also have information on other demi-planes and dimensions, even specific zones and areas within the planes, such as the Akashic Record, a library that could contain all of the knowledge of the multiverse, or the Dead Bolt, which is said to have been crafted for one purpose only, to imprison a god. You even have information on the Dreamlands, Dreams, the Dimension of Time, the Plateau of Leng. I'm telling you, this is a great book to use with Sandy Peterson's Cthulhu Mythos for Pathfinder. So many places to explore, this book is probably going to last you a lifetime of Pathfinder adventures. And at the end of the book, we have a pretty decent bestiary, with creatures such as the Bastion Archon. This massive four-armed figure is protected by thick layers of rocky armor. Its face is a shimmering, pulsating globe of holy light. We also have the Argent Warden. This silver-armored knight moves with precision and poise. Gaps in its armor reveal nothing but glowing golden light within. There's also the Cynosoma. This moth-winged woman has a delicate appearance, though her features are somewhat masked by a haze of shimmering dust. All of these creatures look either quite alien, fairy, angelic, or demonic. They are all in the outsider category more than anything, so they are perfect to use in your planar adventures, no matter which plane you want to visit, or several planes that you are traveling through, All of these different monsters and creatures and inhabitants of other worlds are perfect for any type of adventure and campaign that you want to have in the Great Beyond, or even beyond the Great Beyond. So what do I think of Planar Adventures? I think this book is a must-have if you are going to run a campaign featuring the planes in the Pathfinder RPG. But it's also quite useful, even if you are not going to run a Planar Adventures specific campaign, because as I said at the beginning of this review, player characters are always trying to find out a way to overcome different obstacles, sometimes in many creative approaches. Because for example, maybe the player characters need to get from one place to another, but maybe there is some sort of obstacle, be it magical or physical or political, that prohibits travel by air or by sea or by land. And then there is the alternative of perhaps finding a gate that transports you to a particular plane, and you could use that plane as a bridge between another gate close to the place that you want to travel to. So as you can see, the planes can also serve as passageways, multi-dimensional passageways, to get from one place to another in the material plane. There could be many magical items or spells or lore or characters that the player characters can only reach when traveling to the planes, especially if they want to interact with deities, gods, demons, devils, all sorts of extraplanar creatures and outsiders. Maybe the player characters are carrying out quests and missions of epic proportions, and only interaction with such great powers could provide a solution to a problem that affects not only the material plane, perhaps the entire multiverse itself. So I highly recommend that you get Planar Adventures. There is just so much material here, so useful, and even though some things feel a bit more geared or specialized towards adventures in the Great Beyond, you will undoubtedly find many creative ways on how to use this material nonetheless in your adventures and campaigns. I also think that this book will provide many tools for those of you who want to have adventures in other worlds, but you don't want your campaign to become too heavy on the science fantasy side of things. You can still keep things on the fantasy side, using planar gates and artifacts and spells to move around through unexplored lands. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.